But thank you for coming. I'm here to talk a little bit about a topic that's interesting to me. It's been bugging me for a while. It's about how to make this little roaster in the labs more useful in the production area. I've been, ever since I've been working on a 4-barrel ProBat, a little moody roaster, until later days, I've always kind of wanted to find a way to make these roast profiles, these roasts done in the lab, translate into the production area. You have had so many coffees that are cupped from just from the sample roasters that I never felt I could replicate in the big roaster. So this has kind of teased me into try to find a way to scale up, how to go from a sample roaster and use the same roast on a production roaster. So before I start, I just want to dive into some of the, the explanation of the terms that I will be using. One of the key terms is roast profiling. And basically, this is a term that aims to describe how the roaster plays with the heat of the machine over the period of the roast to try to control the development of the coffee. Sweet Maria's from US has a definition on their educational website, and I've used it before. The tool of roast profiling is the key to be able to actually accurately tweak your roast, and this is key to make this exercise work at all. It's also very key to be able to replicate your roast over and over in a production roast, on your production roasters. There are some challenges in how to scale up. First and foremost, you have the different types of roasters. You have the fluid bed roasters, you have your drum roasters, you have your hybrid roasters, you have roasters that's more towards conduction, heat transfer via contact, and you have some roasters that's more or less only heat transfer via air or convection. And some roasters have a lot of extra horsepower, so that you can actually tweak full-scale batches, and others you just basically left with doing whatever's been done in the past. On the other hand, small feisty sample roasters, have a different. It's a different beast altogether, and some of them have no profiling capabilities, like the ProBats or the other very manual roasters. But then you have some that's more or less hands-off. You can just push the button and it does a profile for you. Also, it's the different use purposes. I mean, you have some, the production roasters, they're used to produce a stable roast over and over each day and to make sure that the quality is stable, whilst the other one is there to assess the quality of the beans that you're purchasing or in other situations. And also, you'll have a different people manning them. You have your production lab, and you have your production personnel or your lab personnel, and they will have different approaches to how they roast. And if you have different people working there, it's also going to be a challenge. When it is a little sidetrack, there you go. Little sidetrack, sorry. There are some classic pitfalls in when you find a new coffee and you want to make it work on your big roaster. And I think many of us are guilty of one or more of these pitfalls when approaching a new coffee. You get a fresh bean in and you want to just make it work on a big batch scale without too much fuss and without losing too many kilos of coffee. And you know how to choose this profile. And then sometimes it's just, you copying a profile that worked in the past. So basically you're saying, well, it worked last time around, fresh cup coming in, hopefully it will be fine now, which is a little bit lazy. Sometimes you're taking a profile that you've been using for the same farm coffee, which has been tweaked over the time. The coffee has been in production. And you just apply that to the fresh batch coming in, which will be different. It's fresh, it will have a different moisture profile, moisture content, and so on. So that was a little sidetrack. This is key to be able to scale up from a sample roaster to a production roaster. The new types of sample roasters that's come out in the past few years make it so that you can actually, make a profile that the machine will replicate time and time again. And this, I'm afraid, is not really for the 4-barrel roasters from Probat or the 2-barrel, whatever you're using. They are accurate and they can repeat what you've done every time, more or less hands-off, so you can just push play and they will replicate your profile for you. And you can also tweak minute details in the roast, so you can actually add 10 seconds after first crack, or you can tweak the profile just before first crack to maybe delay it a bit, and all these things these machines will help you with. But if you have one of those, or if you buy one of those, this will be a key tool to be able to replicate or to transfer a profile from these sample roasters up into a big scale roaster. And so I thought I'll present to you 3 theories on the subject. There's more than me looking into this. It's been bugging people for a while, I guess. And 2 of them are lifted from Ikawa, which is a sample roaster. So they have a blog post where Morten Münchow and Emily Jackson has shared their theories, and I'll share ours afterwards. They all differ slightly, but they have some common key points. However, this is really important. You need to know what you're gonna roast, what you are up against. You need to measure density, moisture content, water activity, and all these things. You need to be analyzing your green beans and note down varietal and process and there's so many key aspects you need to take notes of before starting, so you actually to be able to replicate it in a good way. So you can actually assess what's in front of you. So, the Münchow approach could be a film title. Morten Münchow is working in Coffee Mind, which is a company working with education, consultancy, and research within the coffee industry. Many of you probably know him already. He has found that fundamentally color and development time are responsible for 95% of the flavor variation in coffee. So these are the key areas to focus on. And before jumping in, Morten recommends some benchmarking work based on color mapping. And the basic color mapping is actually just measuring the color of your roasts. And you want to create a standard profile in your production roaster, not the one that you probably think will taste best, but will develop the coffee, and it will be a kind of base curve on your production roaster. Then you want to create a standard roast profile on your sample roaster for the Kawa, the Rest, or the Bullet, and with the same kind of attitude. And this, should also match the same color that you did on the production roaster. So you measure first the production roast that you did with the standard curve, then you do a roast on the other machine, or the Kawa or the Rest, and you measure that color, and they should match. So that's the start. And from there on, you will tweak the development time, the time after first crack, to get to the flavor that you're looking for. And they should all achieve the same color that you had determined would be the ideal color for your customers. So the color that you decided for your production roaster, these Ikawa sample roasts or these sample roasts should match the color, even when tweaking development time. Then you cup the coffees and take the roast that for you tastes the best, and you note the development time, the time from first crack until you dump the coffee. You compare this to your standard profile from the sample roaster that you started out with, and you apply this change to the standard production roast that you had on your big machine. And Morten believes that this will achieve translation from your sample roaster to your production roaster with 95% accuracy. Then you have Emily Jackson's approach. She works in Ikawa's coffee and content as a content specialist and uses Ikawa daily. She has working with both in the US and in London on bigger roasteries. And her approach is similar to the one of Morten Minchow, but has a simple framework matching key moments in the roast based on percentage of total roast time. So not the actual seconds that you look throughout the roast, but the percentage of the roast. So you start out with a base profile, like you had in the previous approach, and you modulate time before and after first crack. So you think of adding some seconds, maybe delaying first crack, and playing around with a sample roaster to modulate these times. And she has the DTR, which is development time ratio. She locks it at 13 to 15% of the total roast time. And when it comes to production roasting, Emily tends to have a standard shape curve that she'll use for pretty much all roasts. But we'll change the curve slightly to hit key moments in the roast. For example, color change, like the yellowing phase, and first crack for a specific time. So her main goal is in profiling these coffees is to determine when these times should be. So when she's working on the Ikawa roasters, she will tweak them to find the key moments and apply this percentage rather than seconds and time, as in Morten Minchow's approach, to the production roaster. And she feels that this will match the coffees between the two. And then you have my approach, or our approach, I should say. I'm not alone doing this, which I'm calling the dictionary. Basically, it's working backwards. So I have worked with many different sample roasters and production roasters over the years, but now we're doing a 35 kilo Loring, and we have 2 Ikawa roasters as our sample roasters. So basically what we are doing, we are selecting some of the key profiles that we have on our Loring, say one for, that will work for a good washed Kenya, or a natural Bourbon from El Salvador, or whatever. We take these profiles and we take some coffee from the roast, and then we go to our lab. So then we find 3 to 4 really different profiles on our Ikawa roasters. We roast the same coffee, the same exact green beans, and then we cup them against the original production roast. And from there, the ones that were closest will roast these and tweak slightly up and down in development time, or prolonging the whole curve, and then we cup again. It's like on the conditioner bottle in your bathroom. It says rinse and repeat. Basically, this is roast and repeat, roast and cup. And then when we've done this and we find it's super similar, we put up a blind cupping and see if we can spot the sample roast against the production roast. So we have many production roasts and one sample roast of the same coffee in there somewhere. If we cannot spot it, we feel it's a match. And so then we go in on our profile library on our sample roasters, and we name the profile the same name that we use on the big roaster for the Loring. So the name of the profiles are the same. So then when we get a library of these profiles, we have a dictionary. We have translated the Loring, Ikawa Loring dictionary. And so if we roast on our sample roasts a coffee with some different profiles, and we find one that's really great as a sample roast, we know the name of this curve, this name of this profile will be the same on the Loring, and it will work the same. This is all given the one I think I mentioned earlier, which was, does it have the same density? Is it the same water activity? Is it the same moisture content, and so on? These things need to be similar or the same, otherwise there might be some difficulties in there. So in summing up, there are some obvious economic benefits to avoid having to use only full-scale roaster as a developing roast profiles. If you can do this roasting 50 grams at a time instead of 35 or more, you can save a lot of money and grievances. A sample roaster will normally roast a lot faster. For our sake, it's like 6 minutes against like 10 minutes on a production roaster. And also, if you have one of these earlier mentioned roasters, you could have more than one, and you can do more than one roast at a time, so you save time as well, developing your profiles. And also, you'll have the possibility to find a profile for your coffee, for the green beans that you are sample roasting, that you didn't think of to begin with, using by experience on your big production roaster. So we'll make you also more innovative and more forward-leaning in the way that you approach fresh coffees. And having to go for a profile that you think might work means that you'll probably miss out on some great coffees or great roast profiles that will work a lot better for your coffee. I mean, there's a lot to be said for the importance and benefits of experience. Many roasters are able to find great profiles for fresh coffees based on what they know worked in the past. But if you never challenge your preconceived ideas on how this coffee should be roasted, you have already reached the peak of your roasting capabilities and you won't evolve. So I kind of, this is preaching to the people who think that you should be more innovative in your roasting. So yeah, thank you. It's a really short little thing. And thank you for your time. I hope that some of these ideas passed through translation and that you picked up some new thoughts on how to approach roast profiling and also how to translate your sample roast to your big production roaster. I will be holding a little workshop on the same topic later on at 12:30 today, where we'll be cupping what we have done in our lab and in our production facilities. And also I'll be presenting some work in process, so you'll be able to try and to cup how we approach this concept. So if you want to try this out, it's at 12:30 in the workshop hall. So thank you so much. Are there any questions? No? One up there.
Hi, good morning, and thanks very much for this wonderful presentation. You mentioned something about the time development ratio or ratio development time, or the percentage being 13 to 15%.
Yeah.
Does this equal also to the moisture loss before and after roasting, or this is with regards to the roast profile itself? And how does this affect?
So development time ratio, the 13 to 15% mentioned, is an idea of the total 100% of the roast profile. The development time, the time from first crack until you dump the coffees, should be 13 to 15% of that total time. So the moisture content or the moisture loss is not really a part of that. It's just talking about how much of the total roast time should be the time after first crack.
Okay, that's very exciting, because we come from a part of the world that's dry. So we're in Saudi Arabia, in the middle of the desert, and when we receive some of the coffees, sometimes it's a little bit drier than you would receive the coffee, essentially. So both moisture loss as well as the percentage of the development will slightly change, given the fact that the coffee is slightly drier. So it leaves origin at 11.5 or 11%. It might reach to us with a franchise of about 1%, essentially. This is very important for us in roasters across the globe. And I see this also in Asia, other parts of Asia. So Southeast Korea and Southeast Asia, like South Korea, Japan as well. We find that green beans there tend to dry a lot faster. This is one of the things that we have identified as part of our roast trial and error when we read global books, for instance, written in Europe or the USA, where they would receive the harvest much fresher. So it's very important that we highlight this aspect as well to roasters in our region. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's a challenge I can see, and probably over the years that you've been roasting in your area with this problem, you have found some techniques to counter this.